And we are live. Marcus Conte reporting. Guess who I got right here? Guess who I got right here? You're never gonna guess. You're never gonna guess in a million years who we got right here. You remember? You remember the mysterious doctor, Doctor John, that told us all about the Jen Moore case? How Jen Moore she did the drawings for us, and I told you she was very mysterious and very beautiful, and here she is to discuss from her doctor office. How sexy! It's a fucking doctor office. Yeah, there she is. So we got Dr. John. How you doing, Dr. John? How are you?
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So
How's
let's
your-
I don't know, just talk about some stuff. So thank you very much. I think everybody that watches this thanks you because you told us the technicals of the Jen Moore autopsy, and you're a doctor that I know you don't do it anymore, but at one point that's
Right,
what you did, right? You're an autopsy doctor.
right. Now I'm private practice, but before that was my understudy coming up all the way from yeah.
What's it like chopping a brain out of a head?
It's fine. I mean,
It's part of the It's
it's
part
a
of it, right?
job.
You saw off the skull, you take out the brain, and you put it on a scale, right?
Yeah, you have to weigh the organs. You have to, assess their coloration and a whole list of things. Yeah,
Right. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. There's a lot of blood. There's not a lot of blood. Not a lot of blood, right?
there
Because you
is.
don't bleed when you're dead, right? It just
Of
kind
course
of
you bleed.
you do bleed
Yes,
when
of
you're dead.
course. Plenty of blood. Oh yes.
Wow. So you
Oh yeah.
don't. Wow. That's so. What made you want to do that? Why? As a little girl, you said I want to do autopsies.
No, actually, I think my mom worked in a funeral home, and it wasn't strange to me. I started actually at a funeral home just prepping bodies for their viewing. And from there, I just kind of advanced through. And as I was going to school, finishing up before I started my private practice, I just thought of it as an honor more than anything because not everyone can stomach it. Not everyone is going to be able to think critically about the situation. There's babies. I mean, they're not all adults. It's difficult. So I felt honored to be the one to be able to stamp that and to serve that position for the people who couldn't.
Right. Wow. And it's medically it's important because like people that do autopsies, you're instrumental in crime solving, and people need to know that, like because you're determining almost single handedly how
Right.
someone got killed. So let's look at. I'm gonna just flash up some of this. You have copies of your drawings, right? Your
Yeah.
drawings. So let's look at like the first drawing and just just give us an overview of what exactly this is. So
Well, that's
let
what I
me
was
let me
going to
let me
say.
say
Yeah.
this too for people that are not watching that are watching and don't know who we're talking about. Jen Moore was a an alleged she was a journalist in Washington D.C. and she allegedly was investigating the rape, someone who was allegedly raped by Bill Clinton, ex president of the United States. And she apparently, in theory, was working with this source, this boy, a young boy at the time, an underage boy, who Jen Moore alleges told her that Bill Clinton raped her. Now, it turns out that there is really no evidence that connects Bill Clinton to the murder of Jen Moore. That apparently was a figment of a few larpers online and a
Right.
few bad publications online. Uh, Started with George Webb and crowdsourced Jason Goodman, and also behind the scenes was a publication, True Pundit, Michael Moore, Thomas Paine, who was plugging this fake story that we could not confirm, and they even claim that they have a video or whatever. So that's who Jen Moore is. Jen Moore died August, I believe, 13th
13th. Yeah.
last year, and she's definitely a real person. Here is her. That's the photograph that we know of her. She's been in videos. Dr. John, you can't see this one, what I got, but you know, so there's her toxicology. So again, I'm sorry. So let's go back to the actual drawings. Just walk us through. So we're looking at this thing. Everybody could see it now. It's not a very flattering, you know,
No.
thing. So tell us what we're looking at.
Well, that's, part of what I was going to get into is the description. I just put some color to the page. The description described old scars, surgical scars and incidental scars. We have to document the scars on the body. We have to document tattoos. There's blood actually drawn after you die. You draw the blood and you test it. I don't know if they tested her vitreous fluid in her eye, the white fluid. A lot of times we can store, what we've had consumed in our life and in our past, that it doesn't store it in our blood. It'll be in your vitreous fluid, though. So did they do a vitreous fluid sample? I don't know. So the picture is based on only what I could read off of the page. I know that they have autopsy photos, but without the actual pictures, we're just left to interpret. A lot of the bruising, there's old bruises, and there's new bruises. So some
So
of the
you're
older,
just
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but your drawing is a play by play of
right,
everything that the doctors wrote in the full autopsy, which I'm showing people right now. So all the 4 page autopsy is your drawing is basically a drawing of what we're seeing, right? That's what it
right.
is.
He
Cool.
even mentions her belly button, because you have to. That's considered something of a scar, not really, but sort of. It's listed. There's basic descriptions, but we're relying on what that autopsy, that medical examiner wrote. And if he didn't write down that, she had something because maybe he didn't see it, or maybe he saw it and he didn't think that it was all that significant. And so we're only going off of what was written down, and sometimes those are pretty general.
So so do you think let's just get right to the let's just cut to the chase. Do you think
Yeah.
that based on what I'm showing people, right? There's a lot of scars. There's track marks that possibly. It looks like a defensive wound on the right arm.
Yeah.
It looks like indications on her feet of maybe cutting, on her thighs of cutting. There's surgical wounds. There's a pacemaker.
Yeah.
There's a lip abrasion.
That
Um,
was one of them that got me thinking. Those things don't just, oh, oops, I cut my lip.
right,
What hit her in the lip?
right. But would you agree that I mean if someone is an opioid, look, I have personal experience of that, and I mean I can just tell you one time that I was high, and I woke up on impact. I was actually sitting on a chair, and I woke up from hitting my head on the wall in front of me. That's how I woke up. This
Wow.
is 25, 30 years ago, right? So I know that if you are strung out on opioids, which the toxicology shows some trace that you can, well, at time of death it was a little low, but if she was very high hours before or the day before, falling down is not that
Yeah,
it's not
it's
that uncommon. You can go
right.
and watch junkies in the street fall down all the time. They almost fall. Well, half, you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. The toxicology levels, I don't know if it's indicative of passing out levels, but she had a lot of bruises. And here's the thing with hypertension. So her cause of death is, the hypertensive disorder. Basically, they're saying that she had blood pressure so high that it just, and this is possible. You can have your blood pressure, your diastolic and your systolic being 180 over 130. You absolutely will feel like fainting, falling, or even wanting to lay down and then just kind of when your heart is beating that fast and the blood isn't always moving, you can form clots. That's possible. You can also have pressure, because the arteries, hypertensive disorder, obviously your arteries are not going to be functioning as properly as they should, and you're going to have those symptoms. Falling isn't definitely, that would be absolutely reasonable.
Yeah.
A lot of
So
a
the
lot of
the
the bruising as well when you have hypertensive disorder,
right.
any kind of pathophysiology that goes with the hypertensive heart disease. um,
That's what
you
it
know
says. It says,
it's all encompassing. Yeah, it also encompasses like coronary artery disease. But
right.
one thing I do know is that your propensity for bruising is definitely increased with
Mm.
that, especially if she was on blood pressure medicine. Now, one thing that I was frustrated with while I was drawing the pictures, and I was hoping that I could determine whether or not the medical examiner had any did he have any investigative information going in or not? If he just went in like this is just any average woman, maybe she was a housewife, he didn't know that she used to be a police officer. He didn't know maybe that she was investigating some dangerous things or that she didn't have someone around protecting her while she was most certainly being persecuted by someone. About her YouTube channel, I learned. I had to research her. After I read her autopsy, I realized I needed to research this woman,
Mm.
and
What'd you find out? What do you think about it? She's
well,
definitely there's a lot of material. She
yeah,
did a lot of videos.
I actually listened to her last recorded interview, which I think was just a day or two before she actually died. And listening to her voice and listening to her speak, she's very confident. She's a real go-getter. I mean, I don't see her as a drug addict necessarily. I mean, I know that she was passionate about what she was fighting for. And something interesting I noticed is in all of her videos, she didn't show herself. She didn't focus on herself. She didn't try to sound or look like anything. She was focused on her subject. Whereas you can look at other people that were surrounding her at the time and they were so focused on themselves. I don't
Mm.
think they were protecting her. And
Mm.
she was in some dangerous situations.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I think there is danger in poking around, and because basically what you're doing is you're accusing people of being pedophiles and serial killers.
Right. And not just any people, some of the
Right.
worst people on the planet.
Right. Some really dangerous people. See, I mean, I'm not there. I'm not.
Right.
I wasn't convinced based on the sources of the information, the characters that surrounded Jen Moore. In my
Yeah, that was
assessment,
one thing that I felt
they're
you
not
right.
credible. They're not.
They're
None of them are
not. And I
credible.
think that was the saddest part for me last night after I listened to all these videos of hers. I had to watch a couple of videos from the people she was affiliated with. I mean, I stomached it. It was hard, but I did it. I don't know. I think she was surrounded by a few people that had zero credibility, or, maybe one or two had some slight credibility, but she was very credible, and I think that they were kind of mooching off of her credibility instead
Mm.
of helping her. They were just sort of elated to be involved when she would have to go and serve people or whatever. They were just excited to get to be a part of that. But she was in real danger, and she had a list of people that were probably wanting her to be quiet.
Yeah, they. I don't. I mean, again, the.
Did you know, this
God.
is completely not related to her death, but I didn't realize this either. Apparently, she had a fiance and he
Wow.
was killed. He was found deceased in an automobile about 5 years ago or something, that they were engaged.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I don't know what his story is, or was it a suicide, or what happened in this automobile that they found him dead. But she was legitimately investigating, more than just what she spoke about. I think she did PI work and serving papers, for money, but I don't know.
So
I just
it sounds like you believe that you believe okay this that's the story part of it, but
yeah,
as a an autopsy professional,
right.
do you believe that she was killed, the K word, or a
Well,
murder? Do you
yeah.
believe, based on what you see, is there any let me read what the people that
Sure.
did the autopsy said. It says, this is the opinion. The 49-year-old white female Jen Marie Moore died of hypertensive cardiovascular disease. The manner of death is, quote, natural. Chronic
Right.
alcoholism and pacemaker use are considered additional significant conditions in this woman's death. So, so just based on that assessment,
Right.
this is a doctor that made a decision,
Sure.
a diagnosis that there was no
Right.
foul play. It was natural death. A unhealthy individual died on a hot summer night in Washington D.C.
And by looking at a body and looking at her injuries, just the but what we don't have her family history.
Okay.
Was hypertension, something that killed other people in her family pretty frequently? Then yeah, that sudden cardiac death from that isn't isn't ruled out. But what is her family history? We don't know. So when you're looking at just the body,
Mhm.
you're going off of exactly what you see, what the labs tell you, what hospital staff has already recorded, if anything. Which in her case, nothing, because she wasn't brought in on an ambulance or anything. Um, and that was what was troubling. So for the most part, yeah, it does look like natural causes in as much as she didn't have a gunshot through the back of her head in that. But when you start to read and look at the scars, so this is a confident woman. She was a determined woman. She wasn't suicidal, in my opinion. And just in listening to her last interview, she sounded driven. She was thriving on her mission to make it easy for people to watch her channel and know how to report uh, trafficking, pretty much. And so she had steps of how you go about reporting trafficking if you are a victim, because this is basically what she's dedicated her life to. And unfortunately, she lost it to it, I think, because even if it wasn't directly caused by someone, like, indirect is still an option. She could have had an emotional experience with someone right before, and she was found alone, but perhaps her blood pressure was so high from being so upset. She took some medicine, needed to stop crying, decided to lay down, and maybe her blood pressure did take her out. But there are many ways to speculate, and that's what
Yeah.
was so frustrating. It was so frustrating knowing that this doctor is a very good doctor. Actually, we have the same alma mater, but the actual medical examiner, he's also a professor. He's not just some tired coroner that's like, oh, here we go, here's another autopsy, let's get it done. It's 3 a.m. He's not at all. He actually is a professor in this, and he's great. So I don't think that he necessarily missed something, but I wish there were more information. I wish I could see some pictures. I think there's enough there that has me wondering, was there was there something else? There's just enough scarring and new bruising and the defensive looking wounds, like you say, that make me wonder if there wasn't a falling out of some kind. But that's not the only thing. There were a lot of people persecuting her about her channel. Apparently, YouTube was also after her, and so she had to set up some
Yeah.
other thing. And I wonder about all the enemies that she was making.
Yeah.
I
I
I
think
I
that I
don't
think
know.
that I think that an argument that kind of stands out with what you just said, that if she got into a tense situation
Yeah,
beforehand, right, hours before, maybe even an hour before, minutes before, and she goes back to her room, as you say, the high blood pressure, the poor condition kicks in, the
right.
stress, the emotional tear, whatever. I don't think that I don't think any of that hits the goes above the bar to call it murder or
Manslaughter, kind
you
of, you
know,
know.
just yelling at people is not a crime. You know, it's
No,
not necessarily, unless it's aggravated harassment, someone following you around, someone, you know what I mean, like someone
right,
deliberately trying to bring distress on you. But people that get into an argument and then suddenly, because of your bad health, you go back and die, that
right.
doesn't equate to murder or
No,
manslaughter or any of those things. But
right,
knowing the nature of the characters around her at the time, that is the most likely scenario in this. That one of these characters, they, you know, that because that's you. I mean, you saw just my little
yeah,
rub-ins with these characters is just insane. They're all, you know, they're crazy. They're prone to violence. They strike out at you. They profusely lie about who you are, what you're doing, where you're going, trying to win some sort of narrative. So that is, again. So when I went into this, I thought, well, maybe it was another someone in the Clinton body bag, you know. But
right.
that's what I thought, and that's what
And there
drew
was
me
also
into it.
some speculation on whether or not it was her pacemaker that
Right.
failed, or maybe the bag around the pacemaker breached, and that's one way that they can fail. Well, if that were the case, she would have been a lot more septic. You know, I didn't see
Mhm.
septicemia in her report, so I don't think that that was the case. Although she did have some bruising on her chest, I
Someone
don't think
said,
that's
someone
it.
said, I remember a while ago, someone said you could stop a pacemaker with a strong magnet or some sort of. Is that true?
I mean, you know, older pacemakers and various pacemakers, they all have faults, but most of the time those are ruled out. They put them through quite a rigorous process so that you're not going to worry if you have to go through like an airport or something. You know, most of that stuff, the engineers get all of those bugs out
What
of
about
the
a heart
way,
gun?
but it's
Heart
fear.
gun? You get shot with a heart
Right.
gun? How about
Right,
a
yeah,
like a stun
there's
gun or
rumors
some shit?
about all of that. So there are ways of, you know, people being suicided, obviously, that are not going to be as easy to find out about, especially after a certain number of
Here's
hours.
the
But
thing. Here's the thing.
I don't think that it, yeah, I don't know. I just think
Here's the
it's,
thing. There's people that will view everything as a deep state conspiracy. It was
right,
a hit from the Clintons. She's another victim of the body bag. There are people that is how they see it, and there's nothing that you can do to change their mind. There's also
right,
people that don't believe any of it at all, and then there's people like me that know it exists, but you got to prove it to me that that's what happened. And in
right,
this
yeah.
case, it wasn't. It just it simply didn't. It didn't
Right.
pass
I
the
think even
provable.
early on they were wondering if it was even her because
Right?
they said, oh, she had some kind of pins in her back or
Yeah.
something like that. And well, it wasn't mentioned in the
She wasn't
autopsy. That
5'8",
wasn't
they
her.
said. She was
Right.
five
Well,
one.
you
How?
know,
No, that's not her body.
sure. We don't regularly X-ray before we start procuring the various, you know, organs and weighing them. We're not going to cut out the spine and see if there's pins in it. It would be an X-ray, if anything, and there's no reason that the medical examiner would bother with that. The only way that would have been done is if she had chest pain and got brought into the hospital on an ambulance. They would have done some chest X-rays, and maybe depending on where it was, they would have seen it. But you know, after the fact, what's the point? But
Yeah.
they didn't see it on the autopsy, so they thought that perhaps that wasn't her, and it's most certainly her.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, again, there's people that will dispute up and down that it's not her body. If it is her body, they switched the body, and you know, I had all kinds of people trying to mix up the story rather than. But those again, that's
Just
the
think
that's
of
the
all the
the nature
people
of the
that,
conspiratorial mind, the people that
right,
just want to believe it.
right, and just think of all the people that she was working. If she did have to, you know, do any kind of investigative work, not for this boy, but you know, to pay the bills for $150 to go serve somebody's papers,
Hmm.
you know, and that's how she paid the bill. She knew she was being underpaid. She knew that that's just how she paid the rent sometimes, you know, and it put her in some dangerous situations, and unfortunately she didn't have support. The people that she was hanging around with, I don't know if they realized, that what she was doing anyway, maybe not all of what they were doing, but what she was doing was fairly dangerous, and I don't think that she had any security or anything like that to keep her from um, basically,
Right.
ticking off the wrong people. They're going to take it out on her.
Right. So again, just to revisit it, there's three potential stories, right? There's three
But
potential legs of this thing. The first one is, without the first one, we wouldn't be talking about Jen Moore. The first one is that she was investigating child abuse, and in this case, it was connected to an ex-president of the United States, Bill Clinton, where there's an allegation that Bill Clinton rapes a boy. She interviews the boy, and then a month later, the theory is a month later she dies. But
right,
or they because the right that's one story, and without that story, there is no story of Jen Moore. The other story is a bunch of very aggressive, competitive YouTubers, bloggers called LARPers, right? and and they're competing for attention. They're semi celebrities. They don't know how to handle the celebrity. They don't know who their friends are. They're very cutthroat. There's people offering them, sums of money to promote some narrative. They think that they're being fed information from the deep state, the CIA, and everybody's connected to the FBI. That's the other part of it, that these
right.
characters drove the girl to kill herself, or drove her into a really really bad physical state. She was hanging around with the wrong people,
I
right?
agree.
That's
I
wait,
think
that's two, and the other
that,
one, the last one, and you could talk for a while,
yeah.
is that she was just an out of shape woman who died one night in Washington D.C. in a hotel room alone. Like, those are the three. And
Sure.
I've concluded, after listening to this and everybody's opinion, and seeing autopsies and talking to this one and that one and getting bombed with 500 emails, I conclude it's the one in the middle. That it was the circumstances of the people she was hanging around with that ultimately aggravated her bad condition and led to her death. That's my take on it.
Well,
What do
they
you say
didn't
to that,
help any.
doctor?
Yeah, they certainly didn't help her any.
Right.
They didn't protect her. No one was watching after her that I can determine, at least. Um, I don't know that they outwardly gave her away, although I think she wasn't. I mean, her identity was known, and with the
Mm-hmm.
work she was doing, they were sloppy like that, and so maybe indirectly it could have been option one, in an indirect way. But I think I'm going with option two and three also. I think, her. I don't know her compliance level. Was she taking her blood pressure medicine, or not? And
Right.
was she getting regular? Not to be rude, but was she exercising? Was she staying off of salt? Because her high blood pressure and too much salt, that's a recipe for disaster, and you don't want to challenge that. You're going to be in a cardiac state with your blood pressure so high that you feel like you're having a heart attack or a stroke, or you actually will have a stroke. That is absolutely plausible, and it is absolutely deadly.
Have you ever
Yes.
cut somebody's heart out? Have you ever, like, in the auto and then held it in your hand and said, "I got it"? It's like, have you ever done that? And just say, "Wow, I got this person's
I
heart in my
have.
hand."
I've
Like, take a
held
picture
many
with it. You ever take a
organs, and
selfie with it? Like, take a selfie?
I did not
No.
selfie with it. No, I actually, one of the things that you have to do, especially with a liver, is you want to press your thumb on it, and it blanches out the blood in there, and you can see the coloring of the liver, and if it's a dark color, or how fast it corrects itself and what it looks like, and that's when you're doing with organ donors, especially. You want to just, if the liver doesn't have sharp lines on it, if it's all round and fat and gnarly, then that's not a
Cirrhosis.
healthy person, right?
Yeah.
And I would love to know more about the actual, uh, you know, I want to know what he saw, because I feel like, based on that and not knowing her compliance level with her own care, and then of course she was doing some pretty dangerous stuff. I don't know who all she was serving, but you don't just roll in and serve somebody and think that you're not going to also be, targeted.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
That yeah,
interesting. I don't think
that
I,
supports scenario one. But scenario two also is that again. I'll go back to the stress level. I forgot what I was going to say. You go back to
right.
that stress level of dealing with nefarious characters, and and that's just again I can't get my I gotta see at least one piece of evidence that tells me that it had something to do with Bill Clinton. Now the
Yeah. Yeah.
Epstein thing, we know for sure that Bill Clinton was on the plane 26 times, was on Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express 26 times, right?
Right.
Was probably a frequent flyer at
Yeah.
his mansion in Manhattan. Those are facts, you know. But with this, with the Jen Moore thing, all we have is a bunch of, LARPer liars that fabricate a story, or they take one little piece of the story and then draft big stories around that little story, and that's with the case of Jen Moore, it was True Pundit. It was Mike Moore releasing it through True Pundit, saying that she was that her identity was doxed 30 days before she was found dead. Now that's factually incorrect because the
Right.
videos that I saw, George Webb had panned the
All over the
camera
place.
on her 10 times
All over the
months ago
place.
in the
Oh,
winter. Right?
yep.
So what I'm trying to say is none of the characters are credible telling the story. And why, that's what I wanted to say before. Why did they all flee? Why did they not, care about her friend? Why did they not try to acquire an autopsy? Why did George Webb go on, take a trip with his girlfriend while his other, his colleague is dead in a hotel
Right.
room? Why was Goodman in D.C. and who's this other guy? There's a couple other names, Deep Uranium, and whoever else these other people are. No one seemed to Robin Gritz. No one seemed to have given a shit
Right.
about
Really
her
sad.
at that moment, and that's why scenario two still is
It's
very
unsettling.
suspicious.
Yeah, it's unsettling in general when you read the autopsy and you see some of the markings on her. It's slightly unsettling, and then with the lack of any other evidence of anything nefarious, it's looking okay, natural causes, hypertension, whatever. But everyone focuses on the Clinton expose that she was getting ready to do. But I think that's wrong in one way. I mean, obviously, it's a story, and so everyone's talking about that. But she wasn't just focused on him. She had been doing, uh, trying to help people with child trafficking. This was her career in California. And she had been working on it for so long, just dedicating her life to many kids, many victims, and I think everyone's just so focused on this one, but there's quite a few people that she was a voice for, and so I don't think that it's fair to only focus on this one boy and say that she was just a reporter gonna expose this one thing. She was kind of going full throttle. She wanted to have everyone know about all of these things, and she was really big on free speech, and she was really trying to she was putting herself out there to give people a pathway through the reporting process, and she found, at least what I could see on her Twitter, was that she had found the phone number for the tip line or something like that was the Clinton Foundation phone number, which was strange in itself. But I just looked into it for about 2 hours last night, and I it's messy.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's no doubt. I mean, look, the other thing is, I believe that not in your case. I mean,
Isn't it
you have
sad?
No, in terms of an anonymity, I was going to say with Jen Moore's anonymity, she held her identity in, and I fundamentally disagree with that. I
Yes,
think that if you're gonna come at somebody, come right through the front door
sure.
and let people know who you are. I was going to say in your case, identity is not. Nobody needs to know, your name or
Yeah,
anything
I'm
like that
nobody,
because
but
it's just.
yeah,
But in her case, I think that the safest the safest place to blow a whistle is right out in public. I
right
mean,
out
for
there.
me, I did
Yeah,
it. I went right to the mainstream
camera.
media, ABC, and get right on TV, and
Yeah.
lay it out with your face right on the camera and say, this is what happened, and this is what's going down. And that mystique of trying to hide your identity then leads one to believe, oh, she got whacked. She got whacked. But
I think it's really sad too that the cause she was working for was
it's
a
noble.
really noble one, and then in her death, everyone just kind of moved on, and nobody's carrying her cause, or
Yeah.
at least not that I can see. I don't know. I'm sure
I
someone.
was I was
It's sad.
by just examining this case, I was
Yeah.
attacked by the Pizzagate crowd, the crowd that tried to say that because you're interfering with the narrative that Bill Clinton raped the boy and that's why she died. Just by interfering with that, I became a Bill Clinton sympathizer.
Oh
Just
dear.
for suggesting that there was no evidence to connect it to, and those
For
people
being
seem to
factual, okay.
they seem to have gone away on the in the comments. Maybe they'll come back
Sure.
for this, but a lot of them disappeared, and because there's no real evidence, right? Do you think the Clinton body bag is real? Do you think it's real?
There's a lot of evidence that supports it. It's sad. It's
Right.
very sad. I would hope not. I hope, but
There's
it's
mountains
naive
of
to think
circumstantial
not.
evidence,
It,
mountains that
it's upsetting. I think
point to it.
it would be naive to say that there isn't.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know,
Sadly,
but not in. I don't know. I wish. I wish.
I kind of want to know what kind of pacemaker she had. Was it the
Mm,
kind that could have the? Because there's many different kinds, but if she had such severe hypertension, at least maybe she was on medication, but maybe she had the kind of pacemaker that didn't have alternate heart rates
mm.
to kind of offset when she did have a raised blood pressure. Or did she have one that didn't do that? And I've got so many questions that it's so hard to know.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of yeah. So I mean, we'll use this thread. We'll use this thread if people want to comment. And like I've always said, you're in
She
the
was being
comments.
threatened a lot.
Say again.
I She was being threatened a lot
Yeah.
about her whatever she was making videos about, how to report trafficking and things like that. She had quite a few people that weren't very fond of her, but who doesn't?
Right. 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 It's just like a person. You could say that about any law enforcement person, because the law enforcement person drowns in their pool in the backyard. That means the Clintons jumped over the fence and drowned them.
Right.
Right. That's the and a lot of the some of these characters. I know one, for example. This guy believes that there's that not only are there the children taken away and kidnapped, but they're brought to Mars, and they're breeded on the planet Mars, and
Oh
there's
dear.
the pedophiles drink their blood, and there's a colony of children for pedophiles on Mars. Now
Wow.
that is one of the people in this Pizzagate child that every single celebrity is somehow connected to the pedophilia ring. That it's
Wow.
so epidemic that all celebrities are pedophiles. And I
Trafficking
find
is
that insulting.
definitely.
I find that
Well,
insulting.
trafficking is prevalent.
Yeah.
Trafficking is a real problem, but it doesn't mean that it's always the Clintons. I mean, I think that's what's so sad about this case is everyone's so focused on this one victim and one potential story because it's a story. But what they're not focusing on was her true life mission, which was to help real trafficking victims, real PTSD victims, people that didn't have the strength to be their own voice because of what they'd been through, and she was fighting for that. And I think it's sad that they all lost the perspective of what she was actually doing with her life because of just one little, aspect of it. But the picture was much bigger than that, and I hope somehow that someone is going to pick up where she left off with it. Her work was important work. It's just, if she did die of natural causes, it was too soon. And if she died of, any other, nefarious causes, we'll never know.
Yeah. Either way, it's a very, very sad story. So,
Yes.
thank you, Dr. John. We'll kind of kill it here. We're already over. I think we're 40 minutes. So anything else? I mean, I would hope that if we come across another murder, we have to look at another body that
Sure.
you'd be there for us. What else are we missing? What else? How can we? What else?
There's a lot more to this. There's so
Yeah,
much to unpack. Um,
yeah,
I mean, the mortality rate when a patient is under pacemaker therapy is definitely higher than your average hypertensive patient.
she had an
So,
enlarged heart too, right? Wasn't that part of it? Enlarged heart, I remember.
uh, you know, it, it- within range, she was
She's
within
within
normal
range.
limits, but it wasn't. She had fibrous tissue on her, restricting her blood flow. She had that on her bladder as well. It's all written down in there that this was a tough lady. She was no pushover.
Right, right.
She wasn't somebody that she was just gonna, just lay down and die. She was very strong, and that's what gets me. I don't want to buy into a conspiracy, but I'm also sort of thinking, uh, what more can be done here? And I don't think anything. I think it's whatever pictures there are, if they're sealed or
Yeah.
not, if there was an investigation or not, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and if the people that she called friends would be
No, I would not think that they
they're
were
not
very friendly to
nothing that
her.
they say amounts to a hill of beans because you can't so that's a problem. You can't necessarily her family wasn't there. We don't know who her friends were, if she even had any real friends. All we
Well, I
know is
think what it
this.
is she was so independent. If you listen to her videos, listen to her. I wouldn't listen to the the people that she associated with and that she called friends. I would more listen to her own words. Her voice. She's got a very strong voice. Her words are. She speaks a little quickly, so her words get jumbled sometimes, and it sounds a little jumbled in there
Hmm.
because she's thinking a lot faster than her lips can move as far as explaining a situation to us. And I think that maybe to say her family wasn't there is, I don't think that's accurate as much as
Okay.
she was so independent. They knew she was all right on her own. She didn't need anyone to hold her hand. But unfortunately, I think that confidence that she had, and she was very tough. I think because I can't remember now how many years ago it was, but she was actually for someone that she served in a case that she had investigated. She was attacked by four men in her living environment, and they beat her up. This was a few years ago. And to tell her, you're talking too much. You need to shut up.
Hmm.
And so, that was part of, the 4 or 5 years ago when also her fiance was found deceased in an automobile. So there's a lot of her past that's legitimate, and I think it's so sad. Excuse me, that a couple of the people, not everyone she was affiliated with, but just a couple of people she was affiliated with are so it's hard to validate them as far as what their background is or what they're involved in, and it almost brings down, it almost takes her legitimacy down a notch because of who she's associating herself with, and it's so sad that that's the case.
Yeah, yeah. We may never know. I mean, there's just
Right?
the there is some characters that were very very close, and I wish maybe someday there'll be some truth to this, but it still rages on. I mean, it's only a year. There's no statue on manslaughter or murder or
Right.
you know, so anyway, thank you, Dr. John. I'm gonna kill it right here. Thank you, Dr. John. Stay with me, Dr. John. So Marcus Conte reporting on this very, very crazy story. We got a There's our expert opinion on the Jen Moore case. And although it's fallen kind of by the wayside, we're still watching it. I'm still there. I still got one eye on you guys, man. I'm not letting
Hmm.
you guys go, man. You guys still some explaining to do. Marcus Conte reporting.